What's up, CODEX? If you'll notice, the person that is right here beside me, it is the godfather of CODEX, the El Presidente, the El Jefe, whatever you want to call him, the J-Dubb. So after I did the interview with Uncle Gary for his for the anniversary of his collecting, was it 50 years? Tim thought it would be a good idea that I interview everyone for the CODEX station so we could find out all of our comic history. So, of course, the first one that was up is this guy right here, since we wouldn't be here without him.
Can't wait. Yeah, by the way, 50 years of just like collecting and watching that is just insane.
Yeah.
It just, I got nothing on it.
Yeah, 50 years is, you'll see it when you're in town. It's one thing to see it on video, like it's something completely different to see it in person. But you'll see it when you guys are here for Baltimore. It is, I said before, it's the most epic collection I've ever seen.
Yeah, it just the fact that like half the shows we're sitting there and he's just like, we'll say a comic and he'll just look over and be like, "This one you mean?"
Yeah. Oh, this actually. Oh no! Wait, this is the original. Like,
yeah. Oh, you mean AF-15? Oh, I have it graded. Like,
yeah.
Okay.
So we'll go ahead and just jump right into this. So like all of us, you are a comic fan, or we wouldn't be doing this. So when was it that you started reading and collecting comics?
Okay, so I knew this question was coming up, and I've been thinking about it for like the last week. There's two moments in my life that I remember the most. It was my buddy Keith, his dad is a big comic book fan. And I just remember being infatuated with everything. And I mean, he had all the action figures, just long boxes in his closet. Like weekends, he'd be consistently reading, and kind of caught my eye. And right after I started liking it, I don't know if it was my parents that bought me. They used to do the action figures for the movies when they were coming out, or the TV shows with a comic inside of it. So Daredevil, the movie was coming out, and they had the Daredevil one. I think it was issue 252, if I'm not mistaken, that was in that action figure. Mm-hmm. And I think I read that thing back and forth to the Staples files because I don't have it anymore. And there was another one for X-Men Evolution, and they got me the Wolverine one, and X-Men Evolution 1 was in there. The only time I can think of is I did like comics, like just everything comic genre growing up. I didn't know I did that big nerd kind of stigma, but I do remember like my great grandmother. She always gave me money when I go over for no reason, and it was great. And just buying comics, like those are two instances where it's like close to where it started. So I was probably around, I want to say 10 to 12 when I started, like actually getting comics, not knowing what the collecting aspect of it is, but just getting comics.
So what was it that got you interested in comics? So I think all kids, flip through a comic occasionally, but they don't all keep going. So what was it that got you interested in actually like continuing to do it?
The art, the fact that you could escape from reality for 10 to 15 minutes at a time. It just, you basic thing. It's like you grow up with bullies and you just want to get away from everything. And that was my way of getting out. Like at new kid school, whatever it may be, it was my escape. No matter how bad of a day I had, it didn't matter. I could lose myself for about 20 minutes and just not worry about a thing. And that was my biggest reason for reading. I mean, it's still my stress relief. Like if I'm stressing out over something, I'll stop and read just to get away from it.
Do you remember what your first book is that you got? Gary calls it his Genesis book, that Justice League. Do you remember what yours was?
Yes, there's actually two that I remember. I was going to a convention with my buddy's dad. The day before, I went to my local comic shop, and they sold the packs of comics where it was the full run. The first two books, and I always say it's a tie because I don't know, you could interchange them. Yeah. Was JSA Liberty Files, and the other one was, when I went to the convention, I bought the entire run of Green Lantern Emerald Dawn. So those are those 8 issues right there. Those are my books.
I mean, those are two pretty good ones. The Liberty Files, that was a great miniseries.
Yes, and it ran 2 issues, but the thing that got me was the artwork on the front. Look, that evil, weird Joker manipulated looking face. It was great in an army hat.
So if anybody has watched the station for any amount of time, you know that Jamie, while reads everything, is a big DC head. So what was it? What was it about that drew you to DC more so than Marvel or some of the indies?
I feel like DC connected better with like DC has like, oh, they're all gods, but they have these human traits where you look at someone like a Green Lantern, his biggest fear is failing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always been mine. Like my biggest fear is like, I'm not good enough. And the guy has to overcome that fear every other issue or every other series. And that's something that I strive for because, I'm constantly back in my head, even with the station, it's like tomorrow it could wrap up and I don't know why, but I got to keep it going. So you got like Superman, who's probably the most overpowered character in all of comics, right? And he's this humble, cornbread Kansas boy that still shows love, compassion, and still has a fear for losing his loved ones. Still wants to protect them. You got characters like Barry who suffer loss. You've got Wonder Woman who's got to make a tough choice between where she grew up to where she is now. To me, it really signifies more of the human aspect behind it, and I keep finding them. Marvel has those characters. They have a lot of ground characters too that have the same aspects, but it just didn't resonate with me as much as DC does.
So you said those two series, the JSA Liberty Files and the Emerald Dawn, the Green Lantern Emerald Dawn, were the ones that got you in. They got you hooked for DC. What was the first Marvel book or the first indie book that got you interested in something outside of DC?
For Marvel, the first real book that I can remember probably was Moon Knight.
Yeah.
And just the way it was like three to four different personalities, and you, if you missed a bubble in those books back in the day, you lost the story. Mm-hmm. Like you did not know what was going on. You missed the cover page, you missed the story. Yeah. And it drew me in because Moon Knight's literally a character that suffers from schizophrenia. It's the most human trait possible, like multiple personality disorder, and for him to be this hero that's equivalent to like Batman, but not really. It just drew me in. It was like the opposite of everybody. Instead of like being dark colors, he was just the brightest. Instead of fighting just like gods and demigods, he's actually fighting ground street people working with like Daredevil and Punisher, and then fighting like Ra.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was probably the first one. I mean, I did like Spider-Man for a while, but I never really truly got into Spider-Man. Like I like him and I understand the popularity behind him, but he just never really fit the ego for me.
Mm-hmm.
So
what about for indie stuff? What was the first, because everybody gets, starts off with Marvel and DC because they're predominant.
I didn't really get into indie until I was probably mid-20s. Like, for those who don't know, I'm going to be like 33 in like about 2 weeks. But I was probably mid-20s, and again, I'm at the comic shop, and my buddy's dad goes to the same comic shop. And I haven't seen him in a while. And he goes, how's it going, blah, blah, blah. So I was showing him books I'm reading that he didn't have. And he goes, I got something for you. Hold on. And he walks over by the trade rack and grabs Saga Volume 1. And I read that, got hooked on it, and started getting all those. Then it was Oblivion Song by Kirkman. And then I started going back and finding like the Invincibles and the Spawns and everything else. So now it's like a really high mix of everything that I collect. So I broadened the horizon.
Oblivion Song was Yeah, that was not that long ago.
Yeah, but it feels like forever.
Yeah. So again, going back to, you said JSA Liberty Files
Mm-hmm.
and Green Lantern Emerald Dawn were the ones, like the first ones that you can remember getting. Those are both miniseries. Do you remember what the first series was, like an ongoing series where you thought, okay, I want to get this series and I want to make sure to get the new issue every month, and pick up the ones I missed too.
Yeah, that was Jeff Johns' Green Lantern run. That was probably the first one where it was like I had some of them and I just kind of put them off to the side, and then I got it from issue 1 and I kept going, and then got it to where we hit Blackest Night and everything else. Matter of fact, if we can go back for a second, I just remember too, Moon Knight was the first one I got off the shelf, but the first complete series that I bought from Marvel was volume 3, no, volume 2 of Captain America's 50 issues.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That was the one where they saw Bucky had already turned, but
Yeah.
at the end it was like, see who dies, and it wasn't anyone that even mattered. So yeah, I got all 50 issues of that. That's when Red Skull had the Tesseract.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, that definitely was that point. So, sorry, I just remembered. I was like, oh yeah.
No, that's good. So Green Lantern, so Jeff Johns' Green Lantern, that was the first book where you're like, I'm gonna make sure that I get this
Yeah,
every month.
I had every issue of that, and then the first run I went back to actually collecting, like found all the back issues and everything. It was a race actually to see which one I got first. Was second volume of Nightwing, which ran for I think 156 issues, and also the Kyle Rayner run of Green Lantern, and that does take place with the first 50 issues of Green Lantern where Hal is still part of it.
Yeah,
So
because
it's 181.
Kyle got the ring at the end of 50 and
Mm-hmm.
became Green Lantern really in 51.
Yeah, because I didn't know who Kyle was until I read Ion, which was just a random that I read one time.
Yeah. So, so you said you started reading because you went to your buddy's house and his dad would have comics. So, what was it? What was it that made you want to go from being just the casual kind of comic reader to a comic collector? Like, I'm gonna, do you remember the moment where you were like, I'm gonna just do all of this?
Yeah. It was after the Blackest Night, Brightest Day run, because I was missing like issue 47 of Green Lantern, and I said I'd never do that again because I want to know everything, because that run had everything: Sinestro Wars,
Yeah.
to Blackest Night, to it hit on all levels, and I never wanted to miss that again. So I ended up getting a pull list that started off with like 2 or 3 titles, and then gradually started getting 10 to 15 books a week, and didn't realize it once I got my own job and stuff, not just using lunch money
Mm-hmm.
to get them. So that was a big turning point for me. That book is that series was I would say that's my like Genesis series.
Yeah. So, for anyone out there, like, you can't really see it behind Jamie most
Yeah.
of the time, but we've seen, I'm talking about the comic wall, but
Oh.
we've seen, us on the station, a lot of other stuff that he has to go along with the comics, figures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And again, all kids, play with action figures and toys. If you're Sonny, you torture and destroy them.
Oh God, they're bound and gagged.
But but it takes a move to, from getting that to the collecting aspect of it. Like, I'm gonna get this, and I'm just gonna pose it and keep it pristine, or I'm just gonna leave it in the package.
Right.
So, knowing that you've got a decent amount of them, at what point in when you started collecting did you move past comics to like, there's all this other stuff that goes with it too?
Oh God. Probably when I went to my first convention like without anybody. Like I had friends with me, obviously, but I mean, the first time I made a decision, I'm just gonna go. It was right when the McFarlane line toys started coming out, and I had picked up the promo for Kyle Rayner that they had there and a Batman. And then I got back to the house and I was like, I'm gonna open them. And then they sat there because I didn't want to open them. I had that moment of like, nope. But one of the things too that I do collect are when we go to shows and everything else, I do get pins.
Mm-hmm.
That it actually, I think I have them in here if I can find them. Yep. So these are all from
Nice.
like, these are all the Green Lantern ones.
Yeah,
I got
it's
5 straight years of just collecting Hal for President.
Yeah, I've got that
Green
whole
Arrow.
set of the Lantern Corps pins, and I've got the whole set of those plastic rings that
Yeah.
we talked about too.
They just like that. This is consecutive years just going.
Nice. So, what was it? You talked about going to the first convention. What was the first convention that you went to?
It's actually this convention that I went to, which is C2E2 in Chicago.
Wow.
But before it was C2E2, it was just called Chicago Comic-Con.
You said C2E2. That's a pretty big convention. Or when you was just Chicago Comic-Con. That's a pretty big one to be your first convention.
Yeah, I mean, I started finding the smaller ones too because there's always that nostalgia about the smaller ones.
Yeah.
You always get good deals from vendors, or you meet up with almost the same people you go to those big ones with, in a smaller crowd, and you meet new people too. But as far as like C2E2, it just blew me away, and I never wanted to stop like actually going to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the first, I used to go to the smaller conventions, like the little ones in the hotels and stuff. And the first time I went to Baltimore Comic Con, I was like, oh my God.
I can't do this in a day.
Yeah, it's, because it's so much more than just comics.
Exactly. There's so much to choose from, so much to do. And that'd be the best thing ever is like you go in and day one, no one's really there because it's a Friday and everyone's at work.
Yeah.
And you have like the floor, and then Saturday, a few vendors changing, and there's like thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people there. And then the Sunday, you just start seeing guys being like, half off.
Yeah, they're like, buy this. I need to get rid of it.
Yeah.
That's when you get deals.
Just seeing that is like the best part of it is like you see the vendors change out, or you see people just being like, I can't bring this inventory back with me. What can you do?
So, one thing that's always at conventions is creators.
Yes.
I think everyone in the station, or most of us, have met some creators, before. Do you remember who the first creator you met was, and who your favorite one is that you've met and interacted with?
Ooh, favorite one was James Tynion. The guy is humble, like nice as can be. He was there early. Wasn't supposed to be signing yet. His what do you call it? Like not his agent, but the handler, whatever you want to call him, was standing next to him, and I walked up thinking he was ready because there's no one in his line, and I was like, I'll be the first one. Awesome. Why is no one at Tynion? And handler's basically like, no, he's not ready, and he's like, just let him through. Like, what are you doing? And he's like, here, what do you got? And I had Batman 87 when he jumped onto the project.
Mm-hmm.
And, signed it. He's like, oh, just to let you know, Tony Daniels was over there 2 rows over. He goes, I bet he's not got anybody either. And I was like, well, thanks for your time. He goes, yeah. He's like, these people. He goes, thank you for being a fan. Thank you for taking the time out to see me. He goes, you don't know how much it actually means to us. You might hear it all the time, but you truly don't.
Yeah.
And then my first one was Frank Fosco. I don't know if you know who that is. He did TMNT Urban Legends.
Okay.
He's a great artist. If anyone gets a chance to look up this guy's work, he does a phenomenal job. When I saw him, he was drawing a Shazam with the Infinity Gauntlet on a sketch cover. Wow. And it was phenomenal. So, yeah, definitely Frank Fosco was the first. My favorite was James Tynion. As much as I love the guy, I can give you my jerk.
Oh, I think I know who it's going to be.
It ain't the guy in the elevator, the story I've already told.
Yeah, I think I know who it's going to be.
Yeah, Donnie Cates.
Yeah.
I love that guy, but he's such a dip. Like I messaged him one year on Twitter because that's all he ever did. He like lived on the thing. And I was like, "Hey, you gonna be a C2E2?" And it was like in a week because his name wasn't on there. And he's like, "Nope." 2 hours later, Donnie Cates guessed a C2E2. And I was like, "I thought you weren't going." And he's like, "Yeah, I lied. Too bad." And then I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then you go to meet him, and this is like pre-pandemic. So like there was no virus, no anyone worried about anything.
Oh,
And
is
he's
it
like,
you talk about like the handing the book thing?
yeah, like you couldn't like walk up to him and hand him a book, or you couldn't like touch him. Like eye contact wasn't allowed, obviously. Um, so like I mean, it was a bad experience. Maybe it wasn't his fault, but I feel like it was 100% him. So
Well,
there's
anybody
another one that I've told many
that
a times, but I don't want to say it on air because it just makes me so mad. Anyone wants to DM me, I will tell you the story. I'd be happy to, but I will not say the story live because I will be mad.
oh, the elevator one.
Oh, that elevator one, dude. If I ever see that guy again, we're gonna have some words.
No, I'll say for anyone out there, tell them the thing about the handing the book thing. I know you've said it once or twice on other shows, but
Oh, say the handing the book thing.
yeah, but because they're
Oh,
probably sitting there watching this thinking, what does he mean handing him the book? Like,
oh yeah, because they won't take the book from you. Like you actually had we had at that one we had to hand it to the CGC people for them to carry it over to give to them, and then have they spell out your name on the book. Like I got so mad at one of them. I forgot who I was meeting at the time, but they like took the post-it note, put it on the book, took it out of the sleeve, put it on the book, and then with pen wrote my name on there.
oh,
And I was like, dude, you just left my imprint of my name in the book. Like, there's just some people that just like, I get it. You don't like being handed things, okay, Tony Stark, we understand. No problem. But like, don't have to go to like that process of like handing everything.
yeah,
But like the one that I did love, the coolest guest I ever met was Charlie Cox from the Daredevil movie or
yeah,
series. That guy was awesome. Loved every fan. Didn't care. If you only had 60 seconds with the guy, he made sure you had like 5 minutes.
that's great. It's nice when when they're willing to give you the time and not just kind of, all right, got your picture, cool, and get out of here. Next one.
Yeah, it was him and Dave Bautista was cool,
Mm-hmm.
and Mark Shepard from Supernatural was like the biggest sweetheart you'd ever meet.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with his accent when you try saying your name, it's like, okay, I get it now. Accents are adorable. Leave it alone.
So, for anyone that's watched the station before, and as I mentioned in the beginning, Jamie is pointing the wrong way. Jamie is the one that created the station. So, what was it that made you decide, you know what, I want to create a podcast station where I'm going to talk about comics? There's so many out there. What made you decide I'm going to jump in to do this too?
Okay, get ready for a depressing ass story. No, but so I wanted to do this like 10 years ago, like something like this, like on YouTube or whatever. I always got told how it was a dumb idea. I listened to the critics behind me and chirping in my ear. People like, no one's gonna listen to you talk about comics, bro. No one cares. Like you always had like for us as kind of off subject, but for us, this is us. We get along. You don't know how long we're off air for talking. Like
Yeah.
we seriously are a bunch of friends that are comic book lovers. Passion shows on the shows, but behind the scenes, we still do the same thing. I didn't have that. I had my brother, who I call my brother, but Tommy, if you're seeing this, what's up? I'll see you in a week. But he was like the closest thing I had. So I would talk to him all the time about it. And I kind of like threw it under the rug, didn't think about it. Pandemic hit. And personal life went to hell. Lost my job, lost everything, basically. So all I basically did all day was read and look for a job and then start watching comic book podcasts. So I found a couple, not going to name who they are because, don't want no problems. I really do like them. But I found a couple and I was really enjoying them. But the thing I noticed the most is that there was no passion behind the comic book part of it. Like you'd forget writers or they forget artists. And I'm sitting there like, how do you not know these people? Like, how do you not know Jeff Johns did JSA? How do you not know Chris Hemsworth is Thor?
Yeah.
Like, these things are like stapled in your head, even if you aren't a comic fan, you know? And I kept watching other ones, and it was the same thing over and over again where there was like, it was slapstick guy where he'd be like, let's do this. And there'd be realistic guy. And both of them didn't know how to intertwine. They just clashed. And I'm like, I can do a better job. Like, so I started thinking about it. And right before I pulled the trigger, I ended up moving to Wisconsin and living with some family who took me in, till I found a new job up here. Basically restart my whole life. And it felt like a restart starting the podcast or starting the station. And I was up here like a month or two, and I'm just reading, getting everything done. And one day it just hit me, just do it. So I ended up calling Sonny, who is on the CODEX podcast, and I was like, I got an idea. I don't want to do this by myself though. Like, I need someone to feed off of. Wondering if you're interested. And he said, yeah, but he was filming about a series at a time. So we had to wait a couple months till his filming was over, because I only had a certain amount of time to do everything and then for this to start. And basically sitting there, we went through everything. Like what we were going to do the first episode, what we were going to say, what book we were reviewing. We bought the books like months in advance, like the first 3 trades of everything. So that way we knew what we were going to read the first 3 episodes. And then first episode happened and we did none of that. We were literally just like, and yeah. So I think the first episode we did was like 30 minutes because we went so fast. And it's like a normal segmented episode that we would normally do.
Because you get nervous and you're like, I just got to rush through this.
Well, it's all new. So like you're looking at, and we were doing it off Twitch at the time. And you're looking at your view count. You're looking over here at the chat. You're making sure everything's going on. And it's just crickets. And you're like, nobody likes us. And then, we started getting a little bit of steam with the podcast. And then I came up with an idea for another show called Decoding Panels, which we still have on the channel. It's on the back burner right now, but we're thinking about bringing it back. So we reached out to people in our comic book groups and was like, hey, would anyone be interested in doing some reading, basically telling the story, and I do the pages layout and everything. I do all the editing. All I need is your voice. And funny thing was, I think it was you that went through it. Sal was one of the people. And then they messaged me for Tone to do it, who was previously on the station. Miss you, bud. And then we got to Tim. And I interviewed Tim.
I remember interviewing with Sonny about it, and I told him, I was like, because he told me the idea, and I was like, best of luck to you. I was like, I don't think I would do good at this. I was like, I told him, I was like, I don't think I would do a very good job at this. So, best of luck to you. If you come up with anything else in the future, let me know. But I didn't feel like that I would do that great at it. Yeah.
Thinking about it, it's kind of grainy. I don't remember if it was me or Sonny that first interviewed Tim, because I remember I interviewed Sal. I might have interviewed Tim. Oh no, I think I did interview Tim. But Tim dropped, like, dude, this man went into this like it was an interview, like you were getting paid like salary. We were making nothing.
Yeah.
Like, he was like, yeah, I interviewed Todd McFarlane, and I interviewed this person, and I ran almost like CLZ called Stash Your Comics, and I did this and that. I'm like, that's cool. All I want to know is if you can read and talk into a mic. That's all I'm asking for. And so he did it. I said, if you can give me the first 2 pages by the end of the week, I'll make a mock-up. There's the first 3 pages. And so we did Captain America Who Wielded the Shield. And I did it, and I sent it to him. And we both thought it was a knockout of the park. Like, it felt amazing. And then that led into Tim being a part of the team. And then we lead into, me and him sitting down working for a couple hours here and there. Then it'd be 5 to 10, and then 10 to 16 hours, and then brainstorming. Then he became part of the podcast. And then we had ideas for new shows, and then we started realizing this is a lot of on our plate. You know, maybe we should possibly bring more people on. You know, so then we had, I believe it was
Tone, I think, was the next one.
Tone. Tone was the next one, and then it was after Tone had left. I talked to Kevin about doing comic character of the week because we had After Dark where we were showing off everything. So we had Decoding Panels, the podcast, and After Dark. And then we had
After Dark, because I remember the first time I was on the station, it was Tim and Tone, and then me and Sal were like special guests on there. And
you guys were still special guests.
And you know, we did that like once or twice, like once, and then it was like weeks later, like, hey, you want to do it again? I'm like, yeah, it was fun, I'll do it.
Yeah. And then we literally jumped from that to being like, okay, let's just make them permanent members because they've been on enough. But then when Tone left, he told me to reach out to Kevin too, and I talked to Kevin because he did have an idea that I thought would be cool for you guys was comic character of the week because he has the Facebook page comic character of the day. And I sat there, I was like, all right, pick your team. And then he picked you and Sal, and then he told me to be a part of it. I was like, I don't know if I want to actually do that at first. And I was against it. I was 100% against it. I was like, dude, when we get to the characters that you guys get to, I ain't gonna know shit. Like, there's no way. And then we did, and I think those first couple episodes were like trial by fire, you know. But we found our niche. We found what we did good at.
Yeah.
And then after that, we did the 1,000 subscriber giveaway.
Yeah.
And then was the Uncle Gary one. Sorry, I'm trying to remember everything. And Uncle Gary won, or no, it wasn't.
Gary won the
500 follower on comic character today. Yeah. And he came on because I offered like you could be a guest on the show. And I remember sitting at home or sitting at vacation at my parents and watching the show and telling Tim we're not having any more people on. I don't care how much comic knowledge this guy has. And by the middle of the show, I knew in Tim's eyes that he was going to ask me to bring him on. And once the show was over, I just texted Tim. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to be part of the team. And he goes, yeah. And then we brought Gary on. So, and then we can't forget, obviously, too, about the reviews. Like, it's you, and then Kristen knocks him out of the park, and then me and Precious when we get a second to do it.
Well, Kristen was the one doing them herself pretty much for the longest time, right? Like, she would do them, and you guys would have, like, the ones from the podcast, and then I remember you telling everyone, like, hey, we need you guys to do some reviews, and I was sitting there, I was like, we're all like, all right, I think, like, Kevin sent one, and Sal sent one. I was like, okay, here's 15 from me.
Yeah, here's 15 from my side. So, yeah, the review process it's got a good handle on. Before, it was just taking the clips from the actual podcast and using them. And then we realized that we want to do stuff new and try to keep it updated.
So, yeah, unlike, you said you watched some other podcast stations. I think one thing that's, differentiates CODEX from some of them is, I don't really watch a ton of them, but the ones I've seen, they usually have like one or two shows that they'll do. And like, they might do interviews or stuff, but it's kind of that, like, whereas CODEX, CODEX is almost less like a podcast station and more like a TV network.
Yeah.
Like, we got this show and this show and this one and this one, and we'll have interviews and we'll have special presentations and we'll have this. And it's like,
on the hunt, on the spots. Yeah. I wanted it to be versatile to the point where if you're coming in as a new person, even if it's new to comics in general, you can go to a comic character of the week and learn about a character you want. Maybe you don't know and you don't know where to start, and we give you an opportunity to figure it out. Or if you just want to, if you're more advanced, you could literally watch and more caught up. You could watch After Dark, see what we're putting out or what we're picking up, and you can check out the podcast and be like, oh, that's cool. And if you like, spontaneous finding things in a while, you have on the spots and the comic book boots on the ground episodes we got. So there's something for everybody.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I know people I've talked to, and I've told them, like, character of the day. I said, you know what, that show is geared towards people that don't know a lot about comics. If you just say, hey, I saw this character, I think he looks cool, or I heard something about him, like, watch that episode. Like, it will, when you're done with that, you'll have a knowledge of them. You'll have a list of things to go read. A list of creators to keep an eye out for on them.
Yeah, and a lot of the times, quite a few of them are the same. Like, there's a bunch of reoccurring creators.
Yeah,
So you start getting like that mindset of like, oh, this person was on that book too. Like, I didn't know Perez did art on there.
yeah. And you're talking about, oh, when we get to the characters that, like, we would know that you're afraid that you won't know them, but then who was your last pick for character of the day? Oh
Dead
yeah,
Man.
it was, yeah, the super worldwide popular Dead Man.
I love Dead Man. Everyone should know Dead Man.
Oh, Dead Man is a great character.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we've covered most everything. The last thing I would say is, what would you say collecting comics, what kind of impact has it had on your life?
Oh, it built me to who I am. Like today, there's no doubt. Like, if it weren't for comics, I probably would not be here. And that's being honest. Like, people would be like, oh, it's because of this person I made it out, or this person, or this is the reason. Comics kept me out of a depression that took a lot out of me. And those are the things that made me want to keep going. If this person's going through hell and back, how come I can't? And I've said before, like, I've had my issues, but this whole medium has been the reason I thrive to keep going. I mean, I have personal reasons to keep going. Don't get me wrong. I've got a family I got to worry about, everything else. Now it's a different story. But before all this, it was literally comics. Like, you either movie-based TV form or just actual comic book.
Awesome. Well, I speak for me, and I think for everyone, we're glad that you decided to pick this hobby and, let it be all consuming in your life as it is for most of us, because
Yeah.
otherwise we wouldn't have this podcast station. We wouldn't be here chatting and doing all the great stuff that we do.
Right. And, I got to throw thanks to all you guys for making every single second of this possible. So everybody that, is watching this right now, throw some love in the chat for the guys and the girls, because without them, we don't keep going.
So thank you for sitting down for this nice, I don't know what we'll end up calling this, CODEX one-on-one.
Yeah, something.
Codexers, I'm sure you or Tim will come up with a clever name for it.
I'm sure Tim's already got one. He just hasn't told me.
Well, who knows? Tim might, I'm going to be interviewing everyone on the station. So Gary was 1, you're 2. So who knows? Tim might be 3. We'll see.
I'm always number 2.
Who does number 2 work for?
Yeah, you tell him.
All right. Well, thank you for doing the interview and letting us do this deep dive into, This Is Your Life, Jamie. Oh, I wanted to ask too, because I asked Gary where the Uncle Gary name came from. So how did you choose J-Dubb?
Oh, it started when I was probably middle school or high school, and one of my friends was like, it was during the Bush administration when it used to just be like George W.
Oh yeah.
And then someone just came up and was like, oh, J-Dubb. And I was like, oh, okay. And then it went away, and then Tone started doing it all the time. Because before it was I just put my name in. And then I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. Like, okay, I'm just gonna run with that. So yeah, thank Tone for bringing that back.
Well, we all have our own little nicknames we put in here. I don't think anybody uses their actual full real name.
Yeah, no. Sales Slab Guy, Uncle Gary, Tim Terrible, you, because you never use your actual name, it was Dan Kelly Art. Yeah. I don't think so.
All right, well, thank you for sitting down, and who knows who the next one will be. We'll see. But until next time, catch you by the spinner rack.